Greetings all, it's Gerald Clark with you today on behalf of Seventh Planet Broadcasting and Gravity Body Academy. I'm going to focus more on a little bit of Anunnaki history for you guys today. I know you guys like that for me every once in a while. I know I've been doing it for a long time, but I'll keep pulling out a few bones to keep this relevant. But I want you guys to know that there's a direct connection between my Anunnaki research and the fact that I became a structural integrator in the first place. So I want to keep letting you know that I wasn't off in left field. I was doing the structural integration before I wrote the Anunnaki book. Anyway, today I'm going to present a little snippet out of the Chaldean Account of Genesis. This is the Scholar's Select version written by George Smith in 1871 or 76. I always forget. Let me look here, see what it tells me. This version was in London in 1880, but I guess his initial version was in 1871. So I'm going to go to page 31 in chapter 3, and what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is, for some reason, I got really interested in the idea of these, the whole chronology of mankind being written by somebody and left in one of the pre-diluvial cities in Iraq. And I'm going to share that part with you today, okay? Alright. So, from chapter 3, the Chaldean legends transmitted through Berossus and other ancient authors. And for those of you who didn't know who Berossus was, we're going to introduce that here real quick. By way of introduction to the native version of the early legends left us by the Babylonians, it's advisable to glance at the principal fragments bearing on them, which are found in classical writers of Greece and Rome. Several others might have been quoted, but their origin is doubtful, and they are of less importance for the subject at hand. Those who wish to consult them may turn to Corey's Ancient Fragments, 2nd edition, 1876, whose translations, as being fairly scholarly-like and correct, are here given without alteration. So there's one scholar patting another scholar on the shoulder. Okay, so this Corey translation, these Corey fragments from 1876, they're used in several places here, so I'm going to introduce a little bit about that. So Berossus, from whom the principal extracts are copied, lived, as already been stated, about BC 330 to 260, and from his position as a Babylonian priest had the best means of knowing the Babylonian traditions. Okay, the other are later writers who copied in the main from Berossus, who of most of whose notices may be taken as mere abridgments of his statements. Okay, I'm going to read you a little bit from one of the first extracts from Book 1. Then I'm going to jump over to Book 2 and kind of introduce you to what I had in mind. And then we're going to go do some screencasts and look at a couple of locations on a map and things like that. Okay, Extract 1 from Alexander Polyhistor. And this is from Corey's Ancient Fragments on page 56. Okay, Berossus, in the first book of his History of Babylonia, informs us that he lived in the age of Alexander, the son of Philip. Okay, that corresponds to about 330 BC, so that's great. And he mentions there were written accounts preserved at Babylon with the greatest care, comprehending a period above 15 myriads of years. I'm not quite sure how long that is. We get to that later. And that these writings contained histories of the heaven and of the sea, of the birth of mankind, and of the kings, and of the memorable actions which they had achieved. Okay, so pretty heavy stuff. And so there's that whole section that I won't read to right now, but it looks like it has to do with Enki coming out and starting to teach mankind civilizing things. Okay. Let's see, where do we get to the second book? Okay. No, we went too far. I think it was right about... Okay, here. I should have highlighted it for you. Okay. So, this is where it starts getting kind of crazy, and I'm going to stop after I introduce a part of it to you, and then we're going to go check it out, okay? So basically, this book, the Chaldean Account of Genesis, gives the Sumer cuneiform historical version of this great deluge that occurred that he's going to describe here. That was in their record, that most of us, after seeing it, believe that the later versions of it that were written thousands of years later were kind of plagiarized and editorially morphed into what fit their culture at the time. So check this out. This is the second book of Polyhister from Corey's book, okay? In the second book was contained the history of the 10 kings of the Chaldeans and the periods, the continuance of each reign, which consisted collectively of 120 sari. Check this out, okay? This comes from the term sar that we've used and seen many times in other records that represented a year, an Anunnaki year around their sun, okay? Okay, and it turned out to be 3,600 years. You can check this for yourself. Or 432,000 years. So if you multiply 120 times 3,600, you'll get 432,000. Okay, and then it continues, reaching to the time of the deluge. Okay, for Alexander, enumerating the kings from the writings of the Chaldeans after the 9th, Ardates proceed to the 10th king, who is called by them Ziusudra-Atrahasis-Noah in this manner. Okay, so just want you to know right now that in the Atrahasis version, they call him Atrahasis. In this version, he's called Ziusudra, okay? But oftentimes we see it written as Ziusudra, okay? So it's the same being. Okay. After the death of Ardates, his son Ziusudra reigned 18 sari, okay? That's 18 times 3,600. It's a long time. In his time happened the great deluge, the history of which is thus described. The deity Kronos appeared to him in a vision and warned him that upon the 15th day of the month, Dionysus, there would be a flood by which mankind would be destroyed. He therefore enjoined him to write a history. This is where it gets really good. And by the way, Kronos has to be Enki based on what they just said here, because it turns out that Ziusudra's father was Enki in the story. Okay. Here's where it gets really good. Listen to this. Enki, he therefore enjoined him, meaning Ziusudra, to write a history of the beginning, progress, and conclusion of all things, down to the present term, and to bury it in Sippar, the city of the sun, and to build a vessel and to take him into it and his friends and relations, and to convey on board everything necessary to stay in life. This is your Noah story, okay? So I'm not going to do that, but what I wanted you to know was they wrote the history of everything from their Anunnaki ventures here and buried it in Sippar. Okay, this turns out to be really a critical point, and I'm probably not going to go too much beyond this, but I want you to know they had the intention of, after the deluge and after everything settled down, that they go back and get those records and then share them with the rest of humanity. I think it says that here somewhere. Yeah, okay. Well, that's the story if you want to read the rest of that. I'm on page 88 of that. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there, and then we're going to go take a look at Sippar and talk a little bit more about that as it relates to what was said in the Lost Book of Enki as well. Because there's a connection there, and I've said it before, and I'll refresh you guys' memory today about what that is. Okay? We'll be right back. All right, welcome back all. I'm back inside the Chaldean Account of Genesis, and I wanted to finish reading just a little bit more before we jump on to the other stuff that I wanted to show you. So after Ziusudra makes it through the flood up here, sends out the birds, they return again to him with mud on their feet, and he finally realizes the water's receded, okay? So this whole Noah story, and right about here, I wanted to pick up, okay? They who remained within, finding that their companions did not return, quitted the vessel with many lamentations, and called continuously on the name of Ziusudra. Him they saw no more, but they could distinguish his voice in the air, and could hear him admonish them to pay due regard to religion, and likewise inform them that it was upon account of his piety that he was translated to live with the gods, that his wife and daughter and the pilot who had obtained the same honor. To this he added they should return to Babylonia, as it was ordained, search for the writings at Sippar, which they were to make known to all mankind. Moreover, that place wherein they were was the land of Armenia. The rest, having heard these words, offered sacrifices to the gods, and taking a circuit, journeyed towards Babylonia. Okay, one more sentence I want to get in here. And when they returned to Babylonia, and he found the writings at Sippar, they built cities and erected temples, and Babylon was thus inhabited again. Okay, so that was from Corey's writing. So I thought that was really important for you to get that. We go back 432,000 years ago in their first account, and they built these 7 or so pre-diluvial cities. They got wiped out under the king Ziusudra, who was Noah, whose city was the city of Shuruppak. And before that happened, they wrote down the whole history of the world, essentially, from an Anunnaki standpoint, him being the son of Enki, and they called him Kronos in here, and put it in the city of Sippar. Well, this goes back to a couple of things I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Before we do that, let's go see where the heck this place is. Okay, so I put a little place marker on here. I wanted to zoom out so you could see the Tigris, the Euphrates. Okay, so here's the Euphrates, I believe. Yeah, the Tigris. They join right over in here. Or I could have those backwards, I can't remember. Anyway, so here's Baghdad right here. And then just, I think up in this area is Babylon, somewhere right here. So Sippar turns out to be about 60 kilometers. It said north of Babylon. I'm not sure if that's correct, but anyway, I thought it would have been south. Okay, so I looked up the couple of names for the city of Sippar and found a couple of spots where it was located. Let me show you the first one first. Okay, so it turned out to be this one, and there was a discussion of it. Tel Abu Haba is one name that they have for it, and there were a couple other names I saw for it too. And I'll zoom out a little bit here so you can see this is the same spot I found on Google Earth. Here's this little lagoon right here and this really clear forked road coming up here. So when we zoom in, you can kind of see there's some ruins left here. I'll have to look and see if there's other pictures that are better of Sippar. But that's the city of Sippar, okay? And it was really important because, let's go to this picture now and go in there and verify the same spot. Okay, right here. Okay, so as we zoom in there, you kind of get an idea of how big it was. I measured it along this axis right here. We can do that real quick. Let's see how big it is. Okay, let's do a line. Go that up to about right there. Looks like right around there is close enough. Okay, so let's see. Let's see it in meters. Okay, it's 378.4 meters. Pretty big, whatever this city structure is, okay? So, in feet, for people who want to see it in feet, let's put it in feet. Okay, so that's 1,240 feet. So, you know, it's pretty good size. Think about that. Anyway, so that looks like the outer wall, and you can see it continuing over here. Let's close this for a minute. Yeah. And then there's a pretty big structure here. So the whole thing looks like it's oriented this way along these lines, coincident with the outer wall, which is really clear right here and then right there. Okay, see where it makes a 90-degree angle here? But the reason I pointed out Sippar is in the document we're going to look at a little bit, this place was designated as the landing place for the chariots. Okay, this was the alien base for taking off and landing. And I thought, well, is there an airport here or no? It's kind of small for an airport. And I thought, well, let's measure this crazy line over here. Notice this line right here is not parallel with the other lines down here, like that one. So it's like, what? Why is this not? And you can see it's not parallel with the building arrangement either. It's off. So the only reason you do that is if you were doing some measurement of the solstice. It is kind of looking, but it's looking southwest, not to the east. So I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Maybe it's a runway. So let's measure it and see how long it is. Right about there. That's pretty close. Okay. It may extend farther down here. I can't really tell. Okay. So it's only 637 feet, which is 194 meters. That's a pretty short runway. I'm not sure what kind of craft they had, but that would be pretty short. So let's go in and look and see a little bit closer if it looks like there were buildings in there or if that was possibly a runway. Can't really tell. There's some debris in there, but anyway, let's go look at the document here. This is where it gets kind of interesting to me. Where is it? Okay. Well, before we do that, there's some cylinder seal that was famous from Sippar. And you can see the link here above. And I'll read it to you. It's called the Sippar Tablet. The Lord Shamash, Ugmash, Babylonian art, Sippar, Abu Hapa. The Sippar Tablet detail the god Shamash, excuse me, under a canopy holding the ring and staff, inscription of Nabu Apal Edin, 9th century BC stone. It's about 7 inches wide in the British Museum. So there's that one. Look how big he is compared to these other ones. Okay. So Shamash, according to my records, was Utu Shamash, and he was in Enlil's lineage. And he had some very specific roles, but he did show up in this area. Nabu was one of Marduk's kids, who the king Nebuchadnezzar was named after. So these guys were kind of cousins, but they weren't brothers. Okay, so it's interesting that Nabu's name showed up in here. Okay, let's go to the Lost Book of Enki, and I want to go back. First of all, I want to start right here. There's 27 references to the city of Sippar in his book. Okay, and I found it online so that I could screencast this for you. You can see the link up here. Okay, so starting right here, okay, it looks like, no, let's go back a little bit. I want to read something else to you here. Okay, so basically, there's a deluge coming. Let me take a drink of water. The Anunnaki know it. They've had a council meeting. And right here it says that all leaders solemnly swear to let events unhindered occur of all Enlil demanded. First to take the oath of silence was Ninurta, this is Enlil's son. Other of Enlil's side followed. Nergal of Enki's sons was the first to take the oath. Others of Enki's sons followed. To your command I bow, Marduk, to Enlil said, but of what worth is the swearing? If Ajiji their spouses will abandon, would not the fear among the earthlings spread? Ninmah was in tears. The words of the oath she faintly whispered. Enlil at his brother Enki gazed. It is the wish of the king and the council, to him he said. Why will you bind me with an oath? Enki his brother asked Enlil. The decision by you was made. On earth it is a commandment. The floodwaters I cannot arrest. The earthling multitudes I cannot save. To what oath to bind me you therefore desire? So did Enki his brother ask. And then Enlil says, to let it all happen as if by fate decreed. Let it as if Enlil's decision be known. On Enlil alone let the responsibility forever rest. So did Enki to all pronounce. Then Enki from the assembly departed. Marduk with him also left. With quick words of command Enlil the assembly to order brought. Tasked for what was to be done, he with firm decision assigned. Between those who will depart and those who will stay, the grouping arrange. places for assembly to designate, equipment to collect, chariots to assign. First to depart were those who to Nibiru were returning, with much embracing and the locking of arms, in joy mixed with sorrow, the celestial boats they boarded. Check this out. One after the other, the vehicles from Sippar roared aloft. Okay? So the reason I brought that in is because not only did they hide the records there, but it looks like also it was one of the spaceport, just like they said, where all the craft were being held and they were coming and going there. Okay? Okay. And later on down here. Okay. Of all preparations, Sippar, the place of celestial chariots, was the center. To Sippar, Enlil, the tablets of destinies from Nibruki moved. A temporary bond heaven-earth was there established. His brother Enki, Enlil then addressed. To him he was thus saying, however, if the calamity might be survived, let all that had happened be remembered. Let us tablets of record in Sippar, in the depths of the earth, safely buried. Let what from one planet to another done in days to come uncovered be. Enki his brother's words with approving accepted. Emmys and other tablets in golden chests they stored. In the depth of the earth in Sippar for posterity they buried. Thus ready for the signal to depart, the leaders awaited. The approach of Nibiru and its great circuit with apprehension they watched. It was at that time of anxious waiting that Enki, his sister Ninmah, addressed. To her, Enki was thus saying, okay, and I'm not going to read the rest of that, but I wanted to share that with you to get you familiar with the idea that Sippar was a real place. And in the lost Book of Enki, the way Zechariah Sitchin did not provide any reference was very unusual for him. I had all his writings, and other people's too, but he usually always gave references for what he was working on. And in this particular book, he did not. And so it was unusual in that he brought it all together. And he, here's the deluge story here. Okay, talking about Sharupak and the king there. So the reason I bring that up is there were two possible reasons he might have done that. Number one was to bring attention to the fact that he didn't provide references, which was very unusual, which meant probably the reference was guarded, or you could assume that it's just a fiction book. And that's how a lot of people ended up treating him, is that this must be a fiction book for you to have written it, and to write it in the prose manner in which you saw here. It's kind of unusual. So I suspect the latter, based on the fact that I just showed you in George Smith's book that they had talked about in Berossus's writings directly, that he mentioned that they had taken a history of the world, according to their huge Anunnaki brains, stuck it in the city of Sippar, and planned to go back afterwards and recover it and share it with all humanity. Well, isn't that interesting? Who shared that with all humanity? It was Zechariah Sitchin in the Lost Book of Enki. And the connection to me is that because of the chronology so almost perfect in his book, that it was indescribable that anybody could first make that up and B, correlate all of that together in a coherent story. So the claim was that this damaged chronology of Enki's history, who was Kronos in the story, who told him to do it, and participated with him to write the full history. And so I think the Atrahasis was only a small piece of that. But there were even mentioned there were MEs and information on these tablets that recorded the civilizing or colonizing information that you need to set up on another planet. That's what was on those tablets. So very, very interesting. I'm not going to do too much more with it, but I wanted to share that with you today, give you a kind of a close-up look at the city of Sippar. And maybe we'll come back and see if anybody's taken some archaeological pictures of the place that are more significant than this. But this is according to what I've researched, this is it right here. And once again, we'll zoom out here so you can kind of see where we're at. I put the place marker on there. Okay, so I don't know if that continues and shows up for other people on Google Earth. Okay, so there you have it. ancient area of Iraq, near Baghdad, Babylon, Persian Gulf, Tigris and Euphrates, okay? Biblical stuff. Anyway, it's been Gerald Clark with you on behalf of Seven Planet Broadcasting. Thanks for joining me for a little perusal of ancient history. Talk to you soon.